from Portadown. And we're going to hear more from them a wee bit later on. But first of all, the story of Jonathan Fisher. Now, Jonathan is a writer and self-confessed sci-fi fanatic from Lisburn. 25 years ago, out of the blue, Jonathan suffered a life-threatening medical emergency known as an Addisonian crisis, which left him in a coma for months and damaged his brain. He now lives with severe Addison's disease. He's just completed his second book, a collection of sci-fi fantasy stories, and you'll hear from Jonathan in a wee moment. But I have to admit, I didn't know much about Addison's disease. So earlier I spoke to consultant endocrinologist Dr. Mark Vanderpump.
Well, Addison's disease describes the destruction of the adrenal glands. These are two small glands that are situated on the top of both kidneys, and they're very important glands in producing hormones. The importance of these glands are that if one misses the hormones or they're not produced, we go into what's called a hypotensive crisis, where we suddenly lose our blood pressure, become very unwell. So that would be commonly seen during an infective illness.
This is what Jonathan talks about. You'll hear him in a moment, talking about an Addisonian crisis.
Yeah. So the commonest cause historically was TB destroying the adrenal gland. But now the overwhelming number of cases due to autoimmune disease, where your own immune system produces an antibody by mistake that damages your own adrenal glands. And so it's often seen with other so-called autoimmune diseases such as thyroid disease, young person's type 1 diabetes, celiac disease and vitiligo. So it's within that family of autoimmune diseases, and about 2/3 of patients with Addison's disease usually have a coexisting other evidence of autoimmunity as well.
So there's a wide range of ways in which it can affect somebody's life?
Yeah, so and indeed it's got two manifestations. One is a chronic sort of illness where it creeps up over you on many sort of months and years, where people present with tiredness, lethargy, weight loss, abdominal pain. And secondly, and more difficult, is when patients present very acutely, where the diagnosis wasn't suspected. So it would be somebody in casualty who's got a septic illness, who's got a low blood pressure, and they're getting the usual treatment for sepsis with antibiotics and fluids, but their blood pressure isn't responding. So it's one of those diseases that's often missed in casualties because people weren't thinking of it, because it just wasn't suspected. So having a high degree of suspicion to make sure someone hasn't got this is quite important, because the treatment is so crucial. The deficiency is in steroids, and so therefore giving patients steroids at the time that they're acutely unwell brings their blood pressure up, and that helps them get over the illness. Failure to provide the steroids is called that adrenal crisis, is what produces the fatality.
And it's reckoned that there are about 8,000 patients currently in the UK, and most of them between the ages of 30 and 50.
Yeah, so the incidence, I mean, it's actually a rare disease. It's 5 per million per year is sort of the approximate. They say there's a prevalence, so I should say about 50 to 150 per million in a year, in that sort of figure. So it is quite a rare disease, and actually probably is more dominated by women more than men as well. So in terms of the story we're going to hear, being a younger man with a newly presenting Addison's disease would be considered relatively rare. And so doctors, need to have a degree of suspicion that this could be present. So it's not just the presence of what the patient's complaining of, but there are some blood test abnormalities in terms of your sodium and potassium levels when you're acutely unwell that are seen as characteristic of Addison's disease.
That's consultant endocrinologist Dr. Mark Vanderpump. So against all the odds, Jonathan Fisher has made a remarkable recovery to the point that he's now written his second book. Real triumph, because he has considerable speech impairment, he's considerable difficulty using his hands to operate the keyboard, and he uses his electric wheelchair to get around as well. I went to meet Jonathan at his home in Lisburn with his friend Heather McGarrigle, and his new book, 10 Minutes on Mars, is a collection of 18 fantastic tales of life in this fictional Halloween town. Jonathan explained where the inspiration for 10 Minutes on Mars came from.
Well, John, it's the inspiration for 10 Minutes on Mars was Bernie the Mandis. I was unwell, John, for a long period of time, John, and had to start it again, John.
You always wrote?
I wrote, yes, all night. Yeah, since a wee boy.
But in school, you had a supportive English teacher, and they encouraged your writing.
They did.
Have you given your teacher a copy of your new book?
Of course, I have.
Yeah, your old English teacher, Robert Crone, actually gave a speech and a bit of an introduction at the launch of 10 Minutes on Mars. So, yeah, continues to support your writing to this day.
And tell me how you two met up then.
Well, I'm a blogger based in Lisburn here, and Jonathan approached me to chat about his first book, August Always, his autobiographical book, and we've been in touch ever since. Jonathan and I just kind of bonded over a shared love of writing and the arts, and really keen to sort of get a bit of culture and creativity happening in Lisburn.
Now, you mentioned the August Always, and that was your first published book. That was a memoir.
That's it there, John.
Yeah. There it is, August Always. Yes. Beautiful art in the cover as well. There are moments in life that define us, like birth and death. Along the journey, there will be crises of passion, of love, of faith and desire, but none so devastating as an Addisonian crisis. I am Jonathan Fisher, a survivor, and August Always is my memoir.
Yes, Addisonian crisis is like a devastating illness. What I took back 92.
1992. So you were in your
20s. No, the 20s. Yeah. I took crisis out of John, and I was dead. I was brain dead. John.
But you came back.
I did. Thank God I did.
1992 is 25 years ago. That's a long.
I know.
That's a long journey.
I know it is. It is, John. It is. Yeah.
And how has that been?
It's been hard. It's been hard, John. Friends, family. I got a good family, really, and my twin brother David, very close. And it's him there.
This is your twin brother.
It's in the book.
That's you and your brother, David and Jonathan. Looking very smart.
Thank you.
At a wedding, obviously.
That's right. Yeah.
These are beautiful sketches of your mum and dad.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
You did the paintings?
I did.
Self-portrait.
Wow, age 20, self-portrait in watercolour.
I did. There's more.
No, with a beard.
There's more.
The hair was kind of bleached then,
No.
Very sort of boy band look there.
No.
No?
Yes.
You wrote the memoir.
Yes. Yeah.
August Always.
Yeah.
You said yourself, it's like kind of catharsis.
It was exactly, John. Yeah, it was, yeah.
And to tell the story of how you survived.
Exactly, John, exactly. No.
How does Addison sin affect your life now?
It's I got a care package in, John, at the moment, and what to do is they curve me. I've been encouraged on.
And how often do they come in during the day?
Well, about four times a day, John, 4 times a day. They're encouraged. I can't fault them at all.
I have the chair.
Exactly, that chair, and David sorting out the chair.
And you have a voice controlled thing that you can shout at and ask it all sorts of questions.
Alexa, what is Addison's disease?
Addison's disease, also known as primary adrenal insufficiency and hypocortisolism, is a long-term endocrine disorder in which the adrenal glands do not produce enough steroid hormones.
Very good, she's on the ball. So this second book now,
Yes, yeah.
The first one was more personal.
It was.
And I don't know which one was harder to write, because this one, 10 Minutes on Mars, is pure imagination and sci-fi, and it's set in a town called Halloween Town.
Exactly, Halloween Town.
On Halloween night, beware of the sight of witches and werewolves and ghouls. You will scream with delight at the fantastic sight of vampires and goblins and more. They will plunder your larder, and you will scream harder and go mad in the zombie furor. At their window they will come flocking. Bodachs will come knocking, with their evil claws rasping. You will die laughing. Beyond a midnight stream lies a town called Halloween.
The book really is 18 stories of people who live in Halloween Town.
Close, Sean. Jason Zipper is Jason Zipper lives in
Jason Chivers is one of the he's one of the characters in the Jason Zephyr and the Ascensionauts.
Okay.
This is a town stuck in time and located on a fault line where the magical, mystical and supernatural intersect with the dreary and the mundane, creating a confluence of otherworldliness. It is a place where a young boy's fantasy takes him to the Joker's Inn, a sinister meeting place disguised as an old fancy dress shop. The shop's owner, Peter Oberon, is possessed by a soul mask that transports him into the bodies of others to experience adventures from past or future history.
Where does all this come from?
From everywhere.
You've been watching too much television.
No,
Too many sci-fi programs.
I read Ray Bradbury.
The Golden Apples of the Sun, yeah. And you're a fan of Judge Dredd.
Yes, of course, yeah.
And Star Wars.
The Star Trek and Star Wars, both. Yeah.
So, what's next then?
Well, another book.
And the next one then will be more short stories, and again more sci-fi.
Exactly, John.
And final question, what does writing mean to you?
It means everything, John, to me. Everything. Ray Bradbury once said, John, that if you don't write every day, reality will destroy you.
Reality will destroy you.
Yeah. And
that says it all.
It does, I know. Yeah.
It's a good quote from Ray Bradbury. If you don't write every day, reality will destroy you. That's Jonathan Fisher. The book is called 10 Minutes on Mars. It's available in Eason's. And I promised Jonathan when we were out with him that we'd read a paragraph. And this is from the Joker's Inn. You heard mention of Peter Oberon. Peter Oberon is the owner in one of these stories. There are 18 fictional tales from this fictional place called Halloween Town. And Peter Oberon owned... Well, here it is. It's called the Joker's Inn. Peter Oberon owned the Joker's Inn. It was the best costume, fancy dress, joke and party shop in the town and was conveniently located next to the bus station. The shop brought in strange folk from all parts near and far because everyone in Halloween Town wanted to play pranks on someone else. In addition to selling masks and costumes, Peter also wore them. He enjoyed dressing up as exciting fictional characters. In the morning, he could be dressed as a pirate. By afternoon, he could appear as Frankenstein's monster. And by evening, you might see him in the guise of a werewolf. Peter changed his masks and costumes frequently, and every one of them was frighteningly realistic. But some of the town's more observant and attentive citizens wondered if there was more to Peter than met the eye. For some, his masks and costumes were too convincing to be fake. Was Peter, in fact, a shapeshifter or a time traveller? Was he human at all? Or was he a voyager from some distant world who had come to Halloween Town to live secretly and undetected behind his many masks? A clip from The Joker's Inn by Jonathan Fisher, one of the stories from his collection 10 Minutes on Mars. Thanks to Jonathan and thanks to Heather as well for that. And as I said, the book 10 Minutes to Mars is available in Eason's. It's now 10 minutes to 12 on the John Toal Show. Lots of texts coming in for Jean Chetty. We're talking to Jean Chetty and Ciara O'Neill. Pass on